The NFL Combine is in the books, and Michigan and its record amount of players who participated had mostly a very, very good showing. Obviously, still some controversy and all of that, but we're going to get into the Combine as well as some official hires of the coaches and one player who is indeed sticking around, which we did not really know about beforehand. On this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Tuesday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group, and the Combine is officially in the books. So when it comes to those players, we look forward to Pro Day, which is on March 22nd, and then the NFL Draft, which is a little over a month from there. So, and that will be in Detroit. So that'll be hopefully a very exciting moment for the local fans and all of that. But a couple players certainly helped themselves in the Combine. Some just kind of stayed about the same. Some didn't really do anything that was really of note. But in kind of looking at some of the comments that I saw on NFL.com, I think Lance Zierlein, who's one of my favorites, I think he pre-writes a lot of those evaluations before he even sees them in the Combine. Because there's still some things that I just felt like, and I don't really have anything specifically, but just things that I feel like, all right, well, that's just not true. That's just kind of the trope that surrounds that particular player. But a couple guys I feel like really helped themselves. JJ McCarthy, maybe not as much as I thought because he couldn't run, but certainly with his 3-cone drill, which was top amongst quarterbacks, his ability to go out there and throw for the most part, I feel like that did help him a little bit. Blake Corum certainly, I not nearly as fast, of course, but with some of the drills he went through, as well as the fact that he put up as much weight with the 27 reps of 225 pounds. That's as much as Joe Alt, the expected to be the number one tackle, right? He's as strong as an offensive tackle that's supposed to be the top guy, the top 10 pick. I think that helped him. Mikey Sainristil, of course, with just kind of the complete package. These are guys who helped themselves, but there were a lot of players who did not really do anything. When I say that, I mean they literally didn't really do anything. They came and participated in interviews and got measurements. Looking at Junior Colson, who rates out number 2 of the Wolverines, according to NFL.com. Zach Zinter, of course, because of his injury, he didn't go through anything. Mike Barrett also didn't. He's third to last as far as those who are listed. Going through the order of the 18, they have JJ McCarthy number 1, and it goes all the way down to Ladarius Henderson, who has the worst grade, tied with Carson Barnhart. Even though it kind of looked like Carson Barnhart did some things that helped him, but I'm kind of surprised with some of these rankings that they have. Jalen Harrell is 5th to last, which kind of surprises me because it seems like he had a pretty good Combine. But then you see, like, well, here's one of those specifics. Like AJ Barnard said, like he's improving at pass blocking or run blocking or just blocking, I think in general. But he's not going to be much of a pass catching threat. And while Michigan didn't use him a ton in that way, like you saw that he could be that, right? Like if you turn on the tape, you can see that he can do it. I think the biggest surprise for me, honestly, was Roman Wilson running a 4.39. That to me is the biggest surprise. I think it surprised him. I think, he anticipated he was going to run a 4.31, 4.30. I thought he was going to run like a 4.29. I didn't think he was going to be like Xavier Worthy speed. And it's no surprise that Xavier Worthy had the fastest Combine 40 of all time. It might be salt in the wound, but if it is, remember Michigan got a national championship win without him. So I think it's fine, but I think that's the thing that surprises me most. But he's number 3 on the list, ahead of Chris Jenkins, ahead of Zach Zinter. Trente Jones, with what limited he did, I think he showed off his athleticism. He ends up ranking 6th according to NFL.com, just ahead of Mikey Sainristil, who is actually rated 1 ahead of Blake Corum. I still feel like people are sleeping on Trevor Keegan. And I know he didn't necessarily show anything spectacular in the Combine, but I still feel like people are sleeping on him. To me, he is like a 15-year starter. And I mean, granted, when you look at some of these things that they write, right, like they have with their score, they good backup with the potential to develop into a starter is what they have listed for him. Whereas like JJ McCarthy, who's the top guy here, will eventually be a plus starter. You know, that's where they're at with all of that. If you look at the top, the guy who grades out the top, Malik Neighbors, who is higher than Marvin Harrison, year one starter. So yeah, they don't have anyone that they consider like an obvious year one starter here. Let me see where the cutoff is. JJ is behind some of those other guys that I would have thought that he would have been ahead of. But like a guy like Drake May is a boom or bust potential. It lists at 6.5. So, but JJ, who we'll get to a little bit more in a few moments, is a 6.39. So he's 0.11 points behind a guy like Drake May. But still, I mean, to me, there's the top 5 that I feel like in the NFL they're going to look at and salivate. JJ, Junior Colson, Roman Wilson, Chris Jenkins, Zach Zinter, then Trente Jones, who's kind of a question mark because he was never really a full-time starter. I mean, he earned that job at the outset of the 2022 season, and then his injury he precluded him from seeing the field again for a while, for over a year essentially, aside from packages. Blake Corum, I feel, who they have as, just takes a second here, good backup with the potential to develop into a starter. I feel like he's a guy that I think he's gonna get in and he's gonna surprise people because he like that again. Looking at some of the things that they list here, I couldn't go forward. I want to read a little bit of what they said about Blake Corum because I think it's a little surprising. It says compact runner with average size. I'm sorry, this is gonna make noise. Outstanding contact balance and a rare talent for finding and fitting into small crevices for short yardage conversions and touchdowns. Corum is a bit of a one-speed runner lacking sizzle and wiggle, but gets it downhill with timing and finishes runs with good forward lean. I disagree that he lacks wiggle. I think we've all seen the wiggle. And maybe it hasn't been as emphatic as it was in 2022 when it just seemed like he was making Barry Sanders types moves after he hit the first hole. Maybe it wasn't quite as prevalent in 2023, but it eventually was, right? It eventually, when you look at the touchdown runs against Alabama or against Washington, he absolutely had that wiggle. So I think it's kind of surprising. The talent doesn't stand out on its own, but he's strong, competitive, and team-oriented with exceptional football character. Again, I do think the talent stands out, right? He was an inch away from being the Heisman Trophy winner. If it wasn't for getting hit in the helmet or hit in the knee with a helmet, I think that it would have been obvious. But he's obviously, though, a different style of back now than he was even then because he's just kind of continued to bulk up and just get bigger and stronger. And that strength, I think, is something that is going to be tantalizing to many. Now, he's not quite as fast as he was when at the beginning of 2022, where it just felt like he'd hit a hole and just go through it. Right? Like he'd just be gone. That didn't happen really last year. But nonetheless, I just think that people are sleeping on some of these guys. But nonetheless, Michigan still stands in a good position to break the draft record. But who knows, right? When you look at the bottom of this, like I still question whether a guy like Josh Wallace, a guy like Drake Nugent, I know that Drake Nugent didn't necessarily have the best. He's one of the ones that didn't have the best combines. He is one that obviously when we had Brad Spielberger on last week, who really thought that he could really ascend. I don't know that he did that, but nonetheless, I think it's going to be more turn on the tape. And that's when you see how these guys are able to play, that's going to be the most important thing. But let's talk more specifically about JJ McCarthy and his combine and kind of some of the ramifications of what have happened in the aftermath, because obviously he's the big name. So we're going to get to him and all of that here in just a moment. But before we do, get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel. That's America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with just one winning $5 bet. That's all you got to do. pick a ringer, put $5 on it, you get $150 back. And that's just if your bet wins, right? So you can bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams. Don't forget about college basketball, but with quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, a heck of a lot more. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. JJ McCarthy ranks number 1, according to the NFL, when it comes to athleticism score among quarterbacks. That's one of the things that you were hoping to see. That's by next gen stats. Production score 5th of quarterbacks, total score 4th. So didn't really change his overall ranking. Obviously still behind the other 3, according to NFL.com. Didn't run up 40, and the 10 you have the jumps, right, because of his bad hamstring. But he still did a 3-cone drill and a 20-yard shuttle. Let's see if I can pull this up a little bit better here. 3-cone drill and 20-yard shuttle. Let's go to live results. That's because I think that's worth noting here. JJ McCarthy's 3-cone drill, he was 6th of anybody, tied with Blake Corum on the 3-cone drill. When you look at the people around him, Georgia cornerback Kamari Lassiter, Florida wide receiver Ricky Pearsall, Luke McCaffrey, Isaiah Williams, both wide receivers, Tyrone Tracy, a running back. Then you have JJ McCarthy at 6.82 seconds. 4 guys with 6.82. Includes Ryan Watts from Texas, the cornerback, and actually a tight end, and Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. That's really impressive, actually. But as far as quarterbacks are concerned, not a lot of them run it, right? That should be noted. But he was certainly at the top of that. Sam Hartman ran it at a 7.19. Michael Pratt at 7.2. Spencer Rattler at 7.2. 20-yard shuttle, he was tied for first with Michael Pratt at 4.23 seconds. It's a very good number for a quarterback, right? So he didn't necessarily do everything in the world, but he did show kind of what he needed to show. And I think the most important thing was in his throwing. Now, funny thing is on Twitter, you see a lot of Buckeyes circulating the one really bad throw he had, which looked like a miscommunication between him and the receiver. It looks really bad if you just think that it's supposed to go wherever the receiver is, but it's pretty clear the receiver was not on the same page with JJ. But otherwise, I mean, he was mostly very sharp. He had some moments in which he looked excellent and absolutely like the elite guy that you thought he could be, and then he had some moments where maybe he was lagging just slightly behind. The throws to the left particularly didn't all necessarily look like it was really going particularly well for him. But nonetheless, had the 61 mile an hour throw just behind Joe Milton by 1 mile an hour. And it's funny because no one really thought of JJ McCarthy as having a similar fastball to Joe Milton. Maybe it's because Joe Milton can throw it over them mountains. But certainly his velocity really showed kind of his arm strength. This is another place I disagree with Lance Zierlein in that he says an enigmatic quarterback lacking the measurables and splash throws associated with early round quarterbacks. Now, splash throws maybe, right? Like he has a few. It doesn't have nearly as many. But as far as measurables, I mean, he came in at 6'2.5" and 219 pounds. That's much bigger than most people really anticipated he would be, right? So I'm going to go back and look at what some of these guys come in at quarterback. Caleb Williams, right, who's someone that people probably look and say, I mean, he might be a little diminutive. He's 6'1", 214. JJ's got 1.5 inches and 5 more pounds on him. And yet I don't see anything saying he doesn't have the measurables that are necessary to do what he needs to do. Jaden Daniels comes in, again, apologies for the little delays, 6'4", so 1.5 inches taller, but 210 pounds. Again, looking at the notes, I do see it lacks ideal size and arm talent. So at least they do note that. Drake May, who is kind of considered like the safe quarterback, even though he's listed as boom or bust. 6'4", a little bit taller, 1.5 inches, 223 pounds. So JJ is only 4 pounds off while being 1.5 inches shorter. And certainly there's no mention that he is not big enough, right? I think people look at JJ and say that guy is like 180 pounds soaking wet, when the truth is he's 40 pounds heavier than that. So some of this stuff is a little passé, but he certainly helped himself a bit. So first, let's go to the ESPN thing that was circulating on TikTok, and that's Louis Riddick saying of JJ, says, I'll go, this was live from the Combine, I believe, on Friday. I'll go so much as to say this just off camera, talking to some personnel people. They think JJ McCarthy's going top 5. I'm just telling you, he may go top 5. And then when you look at CBS Sports, who just put out its first post-Combine mock draft, that's the first one I've seen, JJ ends up being the number 3 overall pick. Behind, I believe it was obviously Caleb Williams, and I think it was Jaden Daniels that went number 2. Let's look that up just for clarity, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Nope, Drake May was number 2. Whoops, nope, this is an outdated one. This is not the same one. So, well, this is another one by them. Will Brinson 2 hours ago. But there was another, okay, he has JJ now this one now has JJ at number 4 behind Marvin Harrison Jr. So certainly there's more than one mock draft out there that they have put out. But it's okay, Ryan Wilson, I believe, is the one I'm looking for. Yes, Ryan Wilson has JJ at number 3 overall, behind Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. So certainly he's moved up at least the one spot, which is kind of what we said needed to happen. So it's this is great that he is starting to surge in that light. Pro Day can only help him more, especially if he can run, and maybe if he just feels a little more comfortable, works on a little bit of that intermediate stuff that could help him. But I mean, you're going to see a lot of continued things on social media that make it sound like he's a bum. I saw some of that earlier today, even, where they were kind of acting like, like, oh, a GM's going to get himself fired by drafting JJ. And it's like, you just don't know what you're talking about. And I understand the sample size is not as big overall as some of these other guys, because the difference is JJ was just generally more elite. And people say, oh, but he had his Bowling Green game, or TCU. TCU, he had 2 big mistakes, but otherwise looked fantastic. Now, those mistakes were extremely costly. It cost Michigan the ability to go to the national championship game. Bowling Green, yeah, needed kind of the whole team. It was a bad game for him. But don't act like some of these other players haven't had bad games, right? Like Caleb Williams against Notre Dame. He had a terrible, terrible game against Notre Dame. And yet no one looks at that and dings him. For some reason, JJ is the only one who kind of gets that. But you're seeing him surge, which is exactly what you hoped for. And it will be fun come draft day, because you just know how much crying there's going to be, because he has almost certainly cemented himself as, at worst, a top 10 pick. And that's kind of where a lot of people are with this. They're like, oh, he's a top 10 pick. But you're starting to see people put him in the top 5. And I believe that that's not necessarily just because that's their own volition, as much as it is people having conversations with others, personnel within the NFL, and recognizing that he is looked at much more highly by the people who do this for a living than the people who just kind of observe. The people who are actually making decisions for a living look at him in a much higher light. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out. All right, so let's talk about the one player who is coming back. I have quasi-confirmed. And also the fact that we're finally starting to see some coaches, though not announced, officially on board. Let's talk about that here in just a moment. But before we do, are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around that next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. Now, listen, I think Nissan is one of the coolest car companies out there, and I have for 20 plus years. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. Now, also, the 2024 Nissan Armada, that'll change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Now, again, the thing about Nissan is they're always on the cutting edge. They always have the coolest stuff, all the way back to when they first redesigned the Altima in the mid-2000s. They're just the coolest cars ever. So you can take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. So shop NissanUSA.com. Gloomy late winter day here in Michigan requires more caffeine, thanks to a lot of stumbling and stuttering here. Don't have the same joie de vivre as I have on most days, but nonetheless, it's just when it's overcast and it's getting colder by the moment, it is just what it is. Nonetheless, we're going to continue on here. I first was told by a colleague of mine that they were hearing things about Quinton Johnson coming back to Michigan after saying he declared for the NFL draft. And I tried to reach out to a bunch of parties, never really heard anything to fully confirm it. But from a third party source, right? That means a person told a person I know of who I think is reliable. Who I think is reliable. Told a person that I trust who told me. So we're a couple degrees from separation, but it does sound like, in fact, Quinton Johnson is coming back for yet another year. This would be year 6 because he was a 2019 guy. So this would be year 6, I believe, right? 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, year 6. So that's huge news, especially with the loss of Keon Sabb to Alabama. So at least now you've still got your 3-man rotation, and hopefully Zeke Berry can really take that big step forward. He looked really good in week 1 before his injury on kickoff in week 2 kind of kicked him out, right? So it'll be really interesting to see what he's able to do as well. But having Q back, considering the year that he turned in this last year, rotating with Rod and McCarthy, that is huge news, assuming that holds. But I do believe that the source that told me is accurate on that. So we will see. But again, that's why I quantify my sources. I know people like to make fun of it. I'm just trying to be as transparent with you as I possibly can, which sometimes does not mean that I can tell you what I have heard or know, because I've been told that I can't. So this was something that I was told that I could run with, but so there we are. So that's good news. He will be coached by the one coach who has yet to have made it into the Michigan directory. I'm assuming an announcement will come once that happens. But now, as of right now, you've got the other 3 defensive coaches all now in the directory. Wink Martindale, Greg Scruggs, and Brian Jean-Marie are all in it at this point. So staff is essentially complete on paper. So now we just wait for the official announcement. Obviously, you would expect that to happen before too long, but at least now you know that those 3 guys can go and do things in full official capacity. Now that they're in the directory, that means they have been hired. And that means that they can go out and recruit and all of that kind of stuff now that, right now is a recruiting dead period, but once they are fully, they'll fully be able to do all the things that they need to do. So I am excited about that, and I am excited to see what this thing looks like. You got spring ball kicking off in 13 days from now on March 18th, and then we're kind of off to the races. It is odd because Michigan has tended to start spring ball much earlier than this, but they needed it. They actually, for the fact that it took this long to kind of vet and get these guys in, clearly the vetting process is taking a lot longer due to some missteps along the way, which have happened over the years. It goes back a few years, goes back to 2019 with Bob Stoops. I mean, granted, the vetting probably wouldn't have changed how that went. It kind of was what happened later that made it so Stoops wasn't around, but still. Sorry, I said Bob Stoops. I mean, what's his name? His name's not Bob Stoops. That's Oklahoma's guy. Bob Shoop. Shoup. Shoup. Nonetheless, it's too hot out today, as they say on The Simpsons. But nonetheless, everything seems to be out complete. So now we wait to spring ball. And just kind of hearing what some of these former Michigan players are saying at the combine and all of that, there's a lot of like, oh, they're going to take a step back, but it just sounds like, hey, you're going to be surprised. I think that's the good news about having a complete team and having the culture built as it is. We've talked about that ad nauseum, but I think that it's with the culture built, they are in a good spot. I would not be surprised if Michigan was a heck of a lot better than people think, that it doesn't take a massive step back, that it isn't like going from 2016 to 17 or 2018 to 19. Now, maybe it does. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm overestimating it, right? But like I see, it very well could be. I don't know about undefeated. The schedule is a gauntlet, but like a 10-2 or 11-1 season certainly is possibility. I mean, so is 7-5. So it's kind of hard to predict because we just don't know. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow and continue to cover all of the interesting things that are continuing to come out of the woodwork. So anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you again soon. Peace.